Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Krishna. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Today's my birthday, so I thought I'd go ahead and record a video just for you. So let's go ahead and get started. So today's video is going to focus on ways that we can utilize black fills. And you can see that I've got a grid of 9 different squares here. And we're going to try different techniques using a combination of some selection tools and our brushes to go ahead and work with black fills. And I thought we'd start these things off as like mini compositions so you can see the different varieties of techniques that you can use. And it's actually pretty fun. So I'm going to start off by just making some type of a trapezoidal shape. I'll extend that trapezoidal shape out like so, and I'll hit Control X. And what I've done is I've taken that black void and I've turned it into some type of environment. So I've got some thickness on this wall. Now this turns into a wall. I can put a few small stones to go ahead and give us a hint of the material that's on the ground. And I can use the regular lasso tool to create areas where we see some of that light from the opening have an impact on, giving us a sense of like what the environment is. Let me just go ahead and make a hint of some type of vegetation. Again, I'm holding down the Shift key and I'm making a selection. You can see that this kind of looks like a little bit like a bush or something along those lines. So pretty neat. Outside of using the brush to go ahead and denote the opening for this area, we've used the lasso tools to go ahead and create the rest of the environment. So that's actually pretty cool. So another way we can use black fills is if I were to just create some foreground elements, we'll actually have to cut out it's not exactly the greatest cactus in the world, but what we can do is we can throw some bushes here. We're going to create some depth by having this cactus. Maybe this is going to be the edge of a wall. Maybe we have a hint of something else that's occurring on the side here. And these can frame our foreground, and then we can have a midground element. We utilize black fills over here. We have this now saloon or something like that that's off in the distance. Notice how that black fill on the side of the building really gives us a sense of strong lighting. So this looks like a daytime scene, right? And that's because we have white that is primarily dominating this particular space, and the black fills are used to connote shadows and also foreground elements. So they're serving as double duty here. So that's another way that you can utilize black fills. Let's take a look at another area here. So let's say that we want to make some kind of a lake or a hole. And for this, what I'll do is I wanted to move this onto its own layer because I want to make a selection. So let me just do it like this. Make some type of a hole, inverse the selection. Now what we can do is we can make this particular hole the focal point. And let's just put a hint of some type of ladder. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. One little trick that I recommend doing is For the ladder, don't totally connect all of the pieces of the ladder. This also gives us another hint of the thickness of the vertical edge of the ladder. So this is actually going to fool the mind's eye into thinking that there's actually some thickness. And then we can actually draw the top of that ladder. And then again, we can use other tricks to suggest something about the environment. You don't have to have a whole lot of detail, but this is just enough. And it's amazing how black and white, just in and of themselves, can create so much visual interest, right? So that's another way we can actually do. We can use this as a focal point or an opening, right, to make our composition more interesting. So let's take another look here. So we can use black fills as, let me just get rid of all of this. And we can do, just drop the opacity so I can see what I'm doing here. I want to use black fills as a way of creating silhouettes. So if I have some palm trees, I'm just dropping the opacity here so I can actually make my selections and see them. J, that back up to 100%. Now we have this silhouetted structure right here. You can use your brush and you can use your lasso tools, but this creates a really, nice framing device for our objects. And you can mix and match these techniques. What makes it really cool is you're not just limited to just doing one thing. The best inkers actually have an expert understanding of how to utilize black fills. It really adds a sense of weight to the page and really kind of pulls your eye into a particular space. So, you could have, like, say, a screen or something like that, maybe even a hint of some foliage on the opposite side. And now you have something that has the hint of a foreground, a little bit of a midground, and a little bit of a background. So this is pretty fun, actually. I think it's actually pretty enjoyable. Um, and the only limit is your imagination, really. Let's take a look and see what else we can do with this. Well, kind of thinking off the cuff here. Well, I can create a mob of people. So if I want to, just draw, you know, uh, a group of folks that may be standing together, I can always come back in. I can provide some hint as far as their clothing. So this looks kind of blah, but I can think about, okay, maybe they've got, I think we have a little bit of rim light. We can see a little bit of their highlights. Again, carving in with the lasso tool. You can always add other elements. I want to make this guy's head just a little bit more refined. We've got a collar. So we've got some sense of light that's coming back and bouncing off of them. And now we have something that's kind of interesting, right? So some hair. And this can be a nice shorthand way of depicting a crowd without having to draw every single person. Let's give this person some hair. Let's break that silhouette out and have maybe his hands doing something like that. Maybe we can kind of clean that up. The lasso tool is really good for kind of conveying some quick forms. And you can always have, like say there you have a character that might be kind of being confronted by this mob of characters, right? You can remove that white, you can draw in some details, kind of give a hint of shadows. I can even leave that open right there if I wanted to. And now I've got this really interesting dramatic scene, like who are these mysterious folks that appear to be um, standing in front of our character. We are also using this idea of characters that are in silhouette that are much higher in the composition than our character that's in the foreground. So it makes those characters look more dominant or more threatening. Uh, let's take a look at another way we can do this. Let's see, what if we had, just make a shape like this. So in some cases, I'm using the entire square. In some cases, I'm just using a portion of it. Again, kind of like a cast shadow this time. So if I were to fill this in, and then we can have some people that are kind of like surprised. Maybe there's some kids. I'm not going with a lot of detail on this, but you get the general idea. And maybe they can also have their own cast shadows to lend support to the idea that there is some kind of a ground. So we've inferred the idea of a ground without having to draw an actual ground using this particular technique, right? You can use black fills as evidence of patterns. So if I use my polygon lasso tool, let's just go ahead and create some evidence of a brick wall. So I'll make a couple of blocks like this. I'll fill those in and stagger this out. And so these black bricks can be juxtaposed against some white bricks. Let's change the perspective so that it's going to match. And what we can do is we can get this idea of lighting. Close my gaps. And so we have certain parts that are lit and certain parts that are not. So the parts that are going to be, like if there's some shadow here, you can see that there's a certain part that's illuminated here and certain parts of the brick that are not illuminated. And that can add some drama and some tension. Again, you can mix and match this. If I were to come back and add some vegetation. So you can take a pattern and you can have certain parts of the pattern dark and other parts of the pattern that are light to create this idea that light is actually affecting a certain part of the composition. So again, I'm just using black and white. And you can see that when I put these lines here, it's actually creating some evidence of grayscale. Let's do a few more. Let's Make a couple of selections. So here I'm using white as a foreground element. And I've got some dark values here. Again, not closing those lines, but I'll zoom in. There's a person that's standing over here. So you can use white as a foreground element. We have some lighting here. So we can see some of that light kind of bathe the outside. And now this creates a surface without having to actually draw a surface. We're getting this hint of a location. And that's what I really like about, studying black fills when it comes to inking. There's just so many interesting ways of communicating space without having to draw a bunch of lines everywhere. All right, so for this last one, let me think about what we can do for that. So we can create some kind of a repeating pattern. So I'll just use this leaf pattern here. I'm holding down the shift key with the lasso tool to make a series of large and small leaves. I'll duplicate that onto its own layer. Connect those leaves up. Maybe make the bottom edge just a little bit darker. So we have this hint that the silhouette here is basically some type of vegetation. And maybe we have, some hint of a sidewalk. Maybe there's like some kind of a tin can. See a hint of the shadow of the can, and all of a sudden we have this really cool environment. So look at all the different ways that we can communicate black fills. It's not just line art. If you think outside of just creating lines, I think you have a lot more opportunities to create some very interesting visuals. And you can see that when you start to understand this lasso tool and the polygon lasso tool, it can make very quick work of trying to create some of these spaces. And I think the side bonuses is actually a lot of fun to do this. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully this was helpful. It's a little bit more of a long video, but I think it can be useful. So thanks so much for watching. See you in the next video.